Did you guys hear? Taika Waititi is directing a new Star Wars film.
Really? What's it about?
No idea.
Oh. I guess that's all for that movie news story. May the 4th be with you. Japs. We're gonna watch today from Cinema Wins everything great about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Part 1, apparently. You know, with all that reception from Rise of Skywalker, with this being May the 4th, I figured, you know what? Let's celebrate the good that was in Rise of Skywalker. Before we do that, I want to thank everyone who voted on my Twitter, @theGregAlba, of how I should start Star Wars, The Clone Wars. It had been a while since I watched any of the show, so I wanted to just start fresh again. Thank you guys for voting over there. And I started it up again as of yesterday. Way behind now that the show is over. But I need to catch up before The Mandalorian Season 2 comes back. Speaking of TV shows, go over to our Patreon page and become a Patronject today. Over there we have a weekly Q&A podcast, and we do TV show reaction watch-alongs where you sync up with a time code, but we also have the option for reaction highlights included. And those shows are Supernatural, Doctor Who, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, just started that up, Attack on Titan, Death Note, My Hero Academia, fully caught up over there, the Two Heroes movie included, Code Geass, Hunter x Hunter, One Punch Man, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and Promised Neverland. And then there are shows where we only do the watch-alongs for them, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, The Mandalorian, Cobra Kai Season 2, Stranger Things Season 3, Game of Thrones, Black Mirror, and Haunting of Hill House. Become a Patronject today, people. Long-ass intro was done. Let's do this long-ass reaction.
This video feels like a good time to briefly remind you, my dear viewers, what this channel is about. While it started out a lot more tongue-in-cheek, it quickly became obvious to me that bad movies had fans who enjoyed them unironically. So slowly, the bad thing, but I'm pretending it's good shtick disappeared, and I went looking for more sincere points. Although you guys don't begrudge me a few here and there. I do argue against and defend perceived problems, but unless I come right out and say it, the wins aren't about judging whether a movie is good or bad. That's just not what I'm interested in doing with this channel. My mission statement has become, every movie is at least one person's favorite, and I want to try to figure out the reasons why. Then
it is
we
positive.
come to The Rise of Skywalker,
I like that theory.
and I'm that person. Okay, favorite is a big word, but my point is that I'm making this video for me. I enjoyed this movie. And if one more person feels like they can be honest about enjoying it after this as well, that's it. That's what I'm here for.
This is a support group.
That was a great intro. That was a great intro.
Well, they're just coming right out with it. He's back. It seems like your enjoyment of this movie could very easily boil down to that one plot point because so much hinges on it. I guess I'd say pretend for a watch through that it's what you wanted and see how you feel. Call me in the morning. Might as well get this out of the way. I know that it's not what a lot of you wanted. I wouldn't even say it's what I wanted. But here we are. Also a bold move to call back to the Phantom Menace, but like, yeah, Palpy's been the Phantom controlling it from 1 through 9. It's a thing. A little known Elsa saber form, where you just drag the lightsaber through their shoulder. Results may vary.
That's pretty cool.
Dark Side Kylo Ren in one action. I'm gonna say this a few times, but the sound design in this one is always on point. Even
Very
something
true.
we know the sound of, like electricity and lightning, are made creepy and foreboding.
Very true.
I have this image of his cult followers pumping out a Snoke clone. No, he's not ready. His face is all messed up. We need more time.
There's no time. He's got vaguely menacing stuff to say.
Are prey to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
And let's just say hearing Ian McDiarmid say that line again, a line we all agree comes from arguably the best scene in the prequels.
Definitely.
Yeah, yep. You think you'll hear me complain about the Imperial March with a bunch of Star Destroyers rising out of the ice? You won't.
He cheats.
I'm kidding. Take your 250.
Poe and Finn's relationship. Simply the way these two actors interact and talk over each other, it's all endearing.
He's cheating.
Definitely.
How do we thank you? Win the war.
Got the Joker for this role, huh?
What? Good thinking, Chewie.
Taking your friend's advice. Like a little Rick and Morty dimension hopping, showing off the galaxy. Visually, we're on point.
Starting to think
It's pretty
it's
cool.
possible to hear the voices of the Jedi who came before. Nothing's impossible.
Funny you should say that. There's definitely a moral, ethical gray area here, but listening to Carrie's daughter Billy talk about how she thinks Carrie would have loved to be the focus of this movie, even posthumously, puts my mind at ease. And I have to give them credit for seamlessly weaving extra footage from The Force Awakens into this movie. It's one of those times where outside knowledge can break suspension of disbelief, but they did just about everything they could to combat it and gave Carrie and Leia a decent final chapter. I'm bringing this up just to say that I'm probably going to leave a lot of these inconsistencies alone. Yes, before the novelization and visual dictionary came out, I assumed Rey and Leia fixed Luke/Anakin's lightsaber with some Force magic. You know, the way they do literally everything in Star Wars. Ryan specifically left it open-ended.
We have everything we need.
But just writing down after the fact that they healed the Kyber crystal with Force magic doesn't mean a better in-movie explanation shouldn't have been given, or any in-movie explanation. Or that maybe some things should matter and shouldn't be undone. So, another day, another life. Setting up our dyad here, Kylo was taking one last look to make sure it really wasn't Vader speaking to him. By the way, the Emperor does a really good Andy Serkis and James Earl Jones impression.
Every voice you have ever heard inside your head.
And it throws Rey completely off her game and turns her into a lumberjack, which I approve of.
Not an environmentalist, man.
Oh man, that sounds like a...
Excuse me, Miss Ray, may I please have this tree removed?
Actually, it's even sadder. It's like when you accidentally step on your dog's tail and they're all submissive, like they think they're being punished, and you just can't apologize enough. Also, I like the confirmation that since in The Last Jedi, Snoke says he connected them, it means Palpatine actually connected them, and it clearly can't be undone.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Oof. It's not impossible that some cult members use some Sith magic to raise him, but he's back and it doesn't matter. He's always been just the symbol of evil. His backstory never mattered in the OT, and the PT only fleshed out his rise to power as it pertained to Anakin's fall. More on all that later. Although Maz, when talking about Rey's lineage, did say this in The Force Awakens.
They're never coming back. There's someone who still could.
Science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew.
But does he know about second breakfast?
Find it. Find the Emperor. No. I don't want to go without your blessing, but I will.
If there was one theme in these movies that seems to carry through every trilogy, it's masters telling their Padawans that they're not ready, and then the Padawans going somewhere or doing something anyway.
Very true.
I need to go alone.
Yeah, along with friends.
Definition win.
Never be afraid of who you are.
Good advice, especially coming from Vader's daughter/Kylo Ren's mom. Also hugging. Seeing that exhaust pattern and getting the feeling I need to go back, and yep, that is Leia's blockade runner back with her again.
Okay.
It is.
I personally love that Kylo gets his helmet back, but there is a definite undertone from the Knights of Ren. If you want back in, mask up. So not only are the Knights of Ren evil, they're also space polluters. It makes sense.
Aliens would
And I
not
love
like
Kylo
that.
doesn't try
That's
to hide that his helmet
smart
was broken. He embraces it with bright red welds, which is based on kintsugi, the Japanese art of fixing cracks in pottery with gold lacquer. My take on it is
really?
just because something is fixed doesn't mean it was never broken, so I pretend.
Knights of Ren.
Gulls, as in seagulls?
Yes!
Ew.
Unease about my appearance, General Hux.
About the mask? No, sir. Well done.
Oh, Hux, you beautiful sycophant.
They sound like a cult. Conjurers and soothsayers.
Somebody get this guy a copy of New Hope. No Tarkin to save you this time. Couple wife win cuties. And like a lot of things in this movie, they were practical little dudes.
Aww.
Lucky indeed.
I'll miss you, 3PO.
I've never seen anything like this.
I felt the same way, at least for this trilogy. It's the first time this galaxy feels lived in again. There are things going on that don't have to do with our heroes. Even Maz Kanata's place in The Force Awakens felt like...
You know,
it was
that's
set
a
up just for them
good
that
perspective
day.
to have on it.
Rey was obviously a huge colorful party coming from her own desolate planet with no friends or family to party with. And again, all the natives are practical people in suits doing the dances. The kids are puppets controlled by 3 puppeteers each.
Celebration occurs only once every 42 years.
So, you mean the last time it was happening was right around the time Luke saw his sister's R2 recording for Obi-Wan? Generosity. And then they broke Star Wars. Nah, it's the dyad, and one of them doesn't make it out alive.
I got a bad feeling about this.
No feelings were harmed in the filming of this scene.
You really am my love.
You should give it to her yourself.
Ray, it's not like Billy D needs help hitting on anyone. And have launched jetpack trooper mode built right into the Sandmobiles. We've always been sorta able to tell what R2 and Chewie are saying based on responses, but I feel like you can often almost hear BB-8's actual words. And if you're wondering how BB-8 knew the canisters would be helpful, he noticed them earlier.
Hey man, it's Bill Hader.
That's what they
They
say.
planted that seed.
Ingenuity and teamwork.
Be optimistic.
Terrific. You're not gonna believe how
Yeah, the action really is cool in this movie.
Optimism.
I am mechanically incapable of speaking translations from Sith. I believe the rule was passed by the Senate.
3PO gets cut off here, but it 100% makes sense that non-Siths wouldn't want any old scavenger to translate a Sith map and unleash darkness onto the galaxy accidentally. It wouldn't be Star Wars without a big monster of some kind. Another new Force ability for the movies, but you probably noticed that Rey's been reading the old texts, and you really think the Jedi didn't have a Force version of Gear 3? Or maybe Rey watched The Mandalorian. It's a yup for me, dog. I admit it's a weird scene, but we find out later that Kylo's goal here was again trying to confirm what the Emperor said by pulling the Palpatine power out of her. So first, he assumed she'd do something, I'm sure, and if she didn't, oh well, she wasn't worth the trouble then. Reddit seemed mad that he'd risk it, but every single lightsaber duel is a risk that someone is going to die. Force users take that risk constantly. And I don't want to call the old it's just a metaphor, bro, but this is also a look at the dark side versus the light side. The Sith will smash through you while the Jedi like to get the high ground.
The flippies.
I think he really shipped them? I'm sorry, this scene is no more goofy than Obi-Wan's spin move during his duel with Vader. Hey, I never noticed they didn't get coverage of them dueling from this angle. Obi-Wan is just preparing to die before he's prepared to die. Anyway, it is meant to be a showcase of Yoda's little words of wisdom and empire.
Good editing call.
A skinny little girl taking out a TIE silencer. Combine it with this, and it's simply there to illustrate the divide. Dark side, light side, sound design of Force pulls still killing it. Whoops, Yoda was right about the fear, anger, and suffering thing. Also, I guess I was wrong about her being Obi-Wan's descendant.
Ray, I never told you, Ray.
Okay, so apparently JJ said he felt that the thing Finn wanted to tell Rey was that he was Force sensitive. So, fine. Okay. But how is it not that Finn knew she was Palpatine's granddaughter? He says this later.
She's not herself. You have no idea what she's fighting. And you do? I do. And so does Leia.
And we find out even later.
Because you're a Palpatine. Leia knew it too.
So, I'm going with that. Just gonna pretend like JJ forgot. The complaint that comes up a lot is that there are lots of death fake-outs in this movie, but only 120 seconds have passed, so it wasn't meant to be a trick on the audience of any meaning. Just a quick way for Rey to have some serious, perceived consequences for losing control. If you accidentally shoot your friend, you think you're dead, but then you're not. You're still gonna be more careful next time. So the Knights of Ren are actually just more Jango Fett clones? Ha! Rey said he'd do the same.
I just transferred a bit of life. You would have done the same.
Talk about this?
Just look at his pretty face before you commit to murdering him. Yeah, smart play.
Your friend's old job was running spice.
You know what they say. He who controls the spice will out.
You were a spice runner? You were a stormtrooper?
Were you a spice runner?
Were you a scavenger? We could do this all night.
True. But I'm starting to feel a theme happening here. This one. Not being defined by your past.
Forgot how funny Poe was.
Not that you care, but I think you're okay. I care.
Making new friends. Ha! ADA compliant ramp for droids. John Williams. If anyone's earned a cameo. Apparently there are
I did not realize that was John Williams.
Visible in the movie, but they did get Nemesis. Babu Frick is always a win, especially voiced by Moaning Myrtle, who controlled his robotic mouth and eyes with a remote controller.
I had no idea.
You know the old specimen.
That's so cool.
Oof, using his own thing against him.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friend.
I gotta admit, this is like
Astute observations.
really the perfect video to watch today.
No, seriously, Babu is amazing.
Shall we destroy the city?
A little Vader, a little Han.
The Emperor's Wayfinder is
Evil 3PO is not something I knew I wanted, but I'm glad it's seared into my memory now.
Might get you on a capital ship.
So like, yeah, it's an insane thing to give him, but hear me out. The galaxy isn't getting better, so escaping Kijimi probably won't change much for Zori. But helping Poe could lead to change, which we know it does, so it was the right call?
It's okay that we're here.
It's okay that you're here. It's good.
It's good.
Did she do that to us?
Right? Oh, no, of course. It only works on the weak-minded, which is the smartest distraction / insult ever. Not you, you're too smart.
Of course we came for you, Chewie. You gotta raise here.
Ha! Finn's been studying Shriwook.
No, it's true. We're the only ones on board.
You can understand that thing?
Over here.
Well, everyone has anti-stormtrooper brain these days.
Hey, fellas.
Did Chewie miss being called scum? Sneaky Sith.
I promise.
Yes, I was wrong about Obi-Wan and his British accent being connected to Rey, but Palpatine... Does Palpatine have a British accent?
Some consider to be unnatural.
Yes, so I was still right. Ish. Duel through space. You can tell it was filmed with both backdrops and it brings you into the craziness they're both experiencing. By the way, Rey is trained now and Kylo is still basically toying with her. This time he hasn't been gut shot by a bowcaster.
I'm the spy.
Hugs! After everything Nathan put Caleb through with that robot, he still saves him.
You have
That's right. I forgot all about that. It's true.
extra
That's
Skywalker.
part of a middle-of-the-road answer to 2 questions. Why she badass, and how she nobody. The other part is Finn having force powers. Being a Jedi is still open to anyone, but to play in this story that's always been about bloodlines, you gotta have one. Oh, I love that little force brace. Force brace. Is that a new force ability?
Ray, I know you.
People keep telling me they know me. I'm afraid no one does.
Kylo Ren's theme under there would beg to differ. Okay, so the dagger lining up generally does work, because 3PO does say,
From the southern shore, only this blade comes.
but this is a stretch. Okay, defense of the indefensible. The Death Star was built to exist in space, therefore any elements within an atmosphere, including crashing waves, aren't going to erode the outer shell, and the idea is that it's so massive nothing's going to shift its position. So 30 years later, the dagger might still line up. Too close to call.
You know, I forgot how cool this movie looks.
Sound design of the hollowed-out giant space station is on point again, and for me, this whole jaunt to the Wayfinder is another tour of Shadow Moses years later. Maybe when he gets Rey back to her scavenger roots. Vader's Imperial march only on strings from when Luke took his mask off. Am I the only one who can smell dead Death Star? Wait, is that door open because she's a Palpatine? It was clearly a secret room, after all. Alright, probably not what you were picturing, but there's the double-sided saber you all asked for. How about these two getting a final confrontation in the place both of their grandfathers had a final confrontation with their Jedi Master? Since they are So, we get superhero landings all the time, but these are Force landings. I'm sure Wade would like these too.
Damn, that sound design is
The duel in the
even
background?
not
Even
fully
though I
present,
enjoyed the
still like
over-the-top
really cool.
choreographed fighting in the prequels, I always love the raw emotion of sequel duels. Visually, this is one of my favorite duels, with steam from the rain and splashing waves, the sound of the sabers on the metal. And again, it works as the climax of this conflict between Sith and Jedi on top of the wreckage of the Death Star. The stretching of the laser giving way to the Force. Also, there is a switch where Kylo actually becomes more composed again and forces Rey to tire herself out, continuing to prove that on a technical level she's no match for him. For an actress that didn't film any new scenes for this movie, Leia still gets an impactful moment. And I love the through line it led us here. Leia tells Han not to give up on their son, which leads to his death. She then tells Luke that she knows he's gone, but Luke says no one's ever really gone. And now here we are for her last act. One that would believably kill her, given that she abandoned her training way before Luke, and his force projection killed him. I can't quantifiably prove it, but it seems commensurate. But just her one word snaps Ben out of being Kylo Ren. And I understand why it would seem not like an act of love because Rey stabbed him, but that wasn't Leia's goal. She couldn't have predicted Rey's actions. She just wanted her son to feel her presence one last time, and make sure he didn't kill Rey. She was a weakness for him in The Last Jedi, and before this fight, he confessed that he thought he could never go home.
You can't go back to her now. Like, I can't.
He kills Kylo.
That actually really got to me.
Dude, she healed the first wound she gave him in The Force Awakens, too. Also, finally giving
Honestly,
Chewie
watching that Leia breakdown
Lost
moment
Guard.
made this whole video worth it.
Wait, Chewie's not here.
Hey, kid.
Oh, fuck.
Kylo Ren is dead. My son is alive.
You're just a memory.
And one last time with Han. Pander to me, JJ. Undo even your own plot points.
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I...
Do your own plot
I'm
points.
kidding. I love this scene. If you've been paying attention, you know that Han obviously isn't a Force ghost. Ben Solo is finally seeing Kylo Ren's final confrontation with his dad from Ben's perspective. Han's last act was to touch his son's face in an act of love and forgiveness. This is Ben finally realizing what all that meant. That Han didn't get tricked into this, he expected it, and it didn't matter. He'd do anything to reach his son, and even after Leia was shaken, she chose the same. It's an unconditional love that parents have for their children, and it's the antithesis of the relationships that Sith masters have with their apprentices. Kylo couldn't see that when he was lost to the dark side.
Wow.
It took death and more sacrifice to bring Ben Solo back. This isn't meant to be as complicated as I've seen people make it. Love is Ben's motivation from here on out. His dad showed him love in The Force Awakens, his mom did here, and now that the blinders have been lifted, he realizes there's only one person left who loves him. Of course he's gonna go help Rey. He always wanted to defeat the Emperor anyway, but that's clearly no longer his motivation. He wants to save Rey, even if it kills him.
Dad.
Kick your stupid Oscar, Adam. But let's also acknowledge that one line from Han lets us know what that dad from Ben really meant.
I know.
And leaving the I love you unsaid actually adds even more weight to the time he said it to Leia. It wasn't cocky, it was understanding, it was connection, something Ben had lost to the dark side.
As I served you in the old wars,
Hey, you
I
really,
enjoy Pride so much, I actually went back.
you really
to check if he was
persuaded
in the
me on
OT
a
as young
couple of
man.
things
He
here.
was in those movies.
But this droid has it. Thank you.
Taking the time to be thankful.
General.
Okay, so Yoda blew up the tree with Force lightning, Luke projected himself across the galaxy, and now Luke catches the lightsaber. We know that Ahch-To is an important place for the Force, so it stands to reason. Strong Force location, strong Force ghost powers?
Jedi's weapon deserves more respect.
Even though I was hard on Mark Hamill in my Last Jedi video, honestly, I love that he gets this moment. I understand that playing a character and building up who he is in your own mind to have it undone with something you think outside the realm of acceptability for that character, I still don't for the record. It would be hard. I won't begrudge him one last snarky comment. Yoda has always had an outside-the-box approach to all things Force-related, and now Luke does too.
I'm never leaving this place. I'm doing what you did.
I was wrong.
And please don't start on me on how that is a contradiction. Luke realized he was wrong at the end of The Last Jedi.
I will not be the last Jedi.
Both Luke and Leia's faces...
Great point. Great fucking point, dude.
It
was the last night of her training.
Should have watched this video a long time ago.
There's something more than nostalgic
Before
about
he
the
released
scene,
it.
probably, especially since we didn't know about it until now. Leia's theme in the foreground, what looks like the middle of a storm, yet they're still calm and collected. It's quick, ethereal, otherworldly, and I'd watch an entire series about Luke training Leia. I've been keeping my cool here for the most part, but this got me in theaters. Getting to see Luke not try, but doing the very thing he believed was impossible, and the reason he failed, all set to the same Yoda and the Force score, one of my favorites from all of Star Wars. And again...
Powerful light, powerful darkness.
We need to put some hold-on maneuvers. Come on, that move is 1 in a million.
Okay, that one's a little extra winky at the audience, but at least the universe is unbroken now. Y-Wings! The visualization of the Emperor's temple as if the structure is suspended off the ground. Ooh, did he liquefy all the Snokes?
Jam speeders. Sir, they're not using speeders.
Ah, classic Star Wars misdirection. Wait, are they in space? No. Poe did say the ships couldn't escape Atmo a couple of times.
Stuck in that. Is that more reading?
Centering this last battle on the main destroyer with a ground fight and the aerial battle in the background actually makes it less chaotic. I don't know, is it just me or does Ben run like a hero now?
Ben run like a hero now.
Just like
That's such a funny comment. Oh snap! There's things I just did not pick
I
up
love
on.
this story thread. I like that we've been building towards these two using their connection to work together for 2 movies now, and it's fulfillment of something I couldn't even put into words at first. The idea that the connection between the two of them was more powerful than Snoke, who had no idea what was happening, and now the same of Palpatine. That the dyad is something special that you don't see often, and it's another correction the Force is trying to make to bring balance back to the Force.
Holy shit!
I freaking love that hand.
Yeah.
Not too bad of the blue saber. Badass good guy. Adam Driver is always a win. I know because so many hate this movie and probably hate his turn and loved him as Kylo Ren, but Ben Solo, alive now, a showcase of Driver's talent between these two disparate characters. That Han shrug, he is a Solo. Nonchalant, yeah, I'm with her now, sorry guys, this is the thing we do. I'm glad we all seem to agree Adam Driver is amazing. Also, yeah. And no, sorry, I'm not surprised that the actual Sith/Jedi, whatever he is now, the only Force-powerful warrior using a lightsaber made quick work of his knights who were just like guys with cool weapons and masks. And Palpy, you must have downgraded your Praetorians because none of these ones have been able to disappear a weapon from their hand. Guess the Gladys arm was the trade-off? Yep. Get out of here with your cold dead heart. This is all Star Wars is. Light versus dark. That's it. Worst part about the Final Order was the Dementors. Yeah, Resistance, Rebels, Republic, whatever. It's like almost every ship that's ever Star Wars in there.
Nice flying, Lando.
But poor Wedge just does not get a break. Let the man retire. And what if he does something too? Look, I'm not gonna look a gift Bobby Frick in the mouth, but you're bringing him into a battle? Yeah, I'll allow it. I'm sure he's force sensitive. And if you're wondering how Zori got off Kijimi without that token, I think there's a little confusion. Obviously, getting onto and off of Kijimi is not hard since the Falcon landed there no problem. Zori says,
I've saved up enough to get out. I'm going to the colonies.
And Poe says,
How? All those hyperlanes are blocked.
nothing was stopping her or anyone from leaving, just from going to the colonies. Alright, I call that.
With me.
Persistence?
Be with me.
From the first moment I heard it in Force Awakens, Rey's theme has been one of my favorites, and its juxtaposition to the darkness and defeat here makes it stand out in the best possible way.
Bring back the balance, Rey, as I did.
Anakin, Qui-Gon, Yoda, Kanan Jarrus, Aayla Secura, Obi-Wan, Mace, all gone but all telling her to rise. It just works for me.
Every Jedi who ever lived lives in you. The Force will be with you. Always.
Also, yeah. Ooh, love the sound of the saber flying through the air but not shown.
I'm all the Jedi.
See, she's got Bolt 3, obviously she has Cure 3. I haven't taken the plastic off the remake yet, I'm really sad. And if you felt like this was all unlimited power and flew in the face of Luke throwing his saber away, I feel the need to remind you that Luke had Anakin to bank his life on. Rey's only got, well, all the other Jedi Force ghosts. But she doesn't actually attack, she only deflects the Emperor's lightning back at him. Oh, have a little pride. Flame Falcon to the rescue again.
Let's see what you think about the kiss.
Kylo Ren's theme still holding Ben down as the score rises in anticipation. I don't actually think this is the answer here, but it is possible Ben could have read the same text that Rey did during his time with Luke. But the Force is less about magic incantations, waving your wand, and correct pronunciations. That's been the theme of this trilogy at least, which I know upset some people. It didn't bother me because that's always how I've seen it. That's what Yoda lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp was about.
Luminous beings shall we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you, even between land and ship.
Rey had heard stories about Jedi mind tricks, so after Kylo opened her up to feeling the Force, she embraced that same feeling and tried it out. Rey healed Ben, so Ben knew it was an ability the Force offered, and he used it knowing full well he'd have to transfer all his life Force energy to Rey. Okay. So I did mention the slight romantic tension in Last Jedi. I feel that their relationship goes beyond romantic, though. They have like a spiritual connection that probably doesn't have an equivalent for us. Kylo and now Ben has always been drawn to her, and her to him as well. Baby steps. Baby steps!
Baby steps!
Chewie if Lucas said Wookiees don't like metals, retcon is your poison. Based how he showed it off to 3PO though.
What about you, kid?
I don't know.
Well, let's find out.
It's his daughter. I know Billy D can't turn off his animal magnetism. It's not his fault. Triple hugging. Our three heroes in front of the Falcon, Chewie, 3PO, and R2 under the wing of Luke's X-Wing. Come on. Love Rey's theme with almost a pensive Skywalker theme building up underneath. Rey back to her roots, sliding down a sandhill, back to Star Wars roots.
Tobogganing.
Yep, white gold saber made from her staff, blending her scavenger past with her Jedi future. Also, I know the novelization says it's one-sided, but it also says it's the inverse of Dark Rey's, which was double-sided. and the section of her staff they used is pretty symmetrical. There's no spin knob on the bottom, so... Okay, so also going frame by frame shows a green and then blue lights, potentially crystals, so...
Cool.
Yeah. And like I said in my last video, it's not about or what blood runs through your veins. It's always been more important that you choose who you want to be. I've got a few more thoughts about that for later. I know some people were confused why BB-8 wouldn't have stayed with Poe, and I just took this to mean that Rey was gonna come back. I know the movie is over, but maybe this time you three could, I don't know, work together, create some kind of democratic system that can't immediately be taken over by the Sith again? So yeah, it was hopeful for me. Like Poe was busy hitting on Zori, so BB-8 went on a little jaunt with Rey. And obviously one more end where we began with our double sons on Tatooine. Okay, so you know that this is part 1, and if you're from the future, there's a card up there with part 2 in it. It'll also be in the description. But almost 30 minutes, and I didn't get to the conclusion at all. I have a lot written, and I'm still kind of organizing it, so I'm hoping to have that by the end of next week.
Man, I thought this was great.
As well as kind of how it fits into the trilogy, how it doesn't fit into the trilogy, as well as how it fits in with the rest of the numbered movies. So here's to hoping that I don't end up cutting all of that and make this a lie. I'm fairly confident it won't happen. Bold move, you might be thinking, to do a 2-part video for a movie that nobody but me liked. Apparently that's just how I'm rolling right now. And then after that, I'm going to do a movie that's 10 years old that I really like that nobody saw, but I promise you'll like it. And then another one that everybody hated but I liked. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm doing this. But I'm going to keep doing it because...
Sound like Ryan Reynolds there for a second.
Yeah. Side outro. Here's my dog doing something hopefully cute and funny.
Hey, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I really did.
Definitely brought some appreciation to places I was not expecting.
And, you know, all things considered at the time of watching this, and this just went up today, which is May the 4th. It's at 80,000 views, and it has, which I'm sure in real time has a lot more views, 9.5K likes and 505 dislikes. So, I'd say that you're not alone here, buddy. Anyway, let's talk about some of these points. I'd be curious to go back and watch this movie after watching this one now to see how much of the perspective you've taken with this has influenced my mind and my viewing experience. It seems like when you saw this that you were able to really see what they were going for. You're able to see it from the filmmaker and the writing perspective of things. I think when you're slowing it down and breaking it down, what these scenes are going for, it's easier to latch on to what the meaning and intention is behind all this. You know, it's just there's other things that factor into a viewing experience, such as, you know, pacing and all that, which can hype. Yeah, which can like really get in the cloud away. And like even brought up a point about with the usage of Leia, of how sometimes knowing behind the scenes stuff can interfere with viewing experience, and I wonder how much of that does play into the recent experience with this trilogy, especially after The Last Jedi, all those Kathleen Kennedy talks that keep coming out to this day.
This woman is horrible at her job. She does not care anything about Star Wars in any capacity whatsoever.
And then of course, you know, with Rise of Skywalker, there's a lot of things here that when I hear it in this format, I find my mindset and heart being influenced and going, you know, I never saw it like that. Yeah, it's actually a really good point. I want to focus on some things that I definitely feel I'm now changing my opinion on because I think that's the most fun thing about watching a video that's either CinemaSins or CinemaWins, is seeing like, you know, I'm a little bit persuaded into viewing this a bit differently now. Yeah, I think everything you pointed out about like technical stuff, sound design and whatnot, the way everything looks, like this film is so cool looking and like the action is so great, the sound design is so awesome that everything on a technical scale, I feel like at the end of the day, it's a film you can at least go back on and go, it's still a lot of fun and really cool to look at, despite some storytelling flaws that people might perceive. I mean, the whole thing with Leia, which always read a bit strange to me and I know got a lot of criticism, I really think you've opened up my mind a lot to how the movie was intending all this to go. Here, I screenshotted it. I'd just rather read it. Leia tells Han not to give up on their son, which leads to his death. She then tells Luke that she knows he's gone, but Luke says no one's ever really gone. She was a weakness for him in The Last Jedi. Before this fight, he confessed that he thought he could never go home. And now here we are for her last act, one that would believably kill her, given that she abandoned her training way before Luke and his Force projection killed him. She just wanted her son to feel her presence one last time and make sure he didn't kill Rey. All those arguments brought up, there's nothing more I can really add to that because I just think that it's so well put, it's so well articulated. That does make sense. There was that thing established in The Last Jedi where Ben is very hesitant to kill Leia on the ship. The fact that she didn't complete her training, how her using that Force projection and just wanting to connect with her son one last time, of this person who's always having faith and hope in Kylo. Honestly, I thought that was really moving moving and very beautiful, and the way you put it completely changed my perspective on that scene and made me really appreciate it, and how that led to what Rey doing, when she stabs him, is like the symbolism of you're killing Kylo Ren and you're bringing Ben Solo back. And then everything proceeding after that, right up to Han scene, was Ben Solo now reliving that final moment with Han, seeing it from the Ben Solo perspective and not the Kylo Ren influenced by Sith perspective. I've said it many times, 9 times out of 10, I'm not a fan of someone seeing Ghost Dad. I usually find that to be a cheap arc trick, but the way that it's bringing it full circle from Force Awakens to this and really showcasing that it's gone from Kylo Ren to Ben Solo, I think is very powerful, very beautiful. So literally all my criticisms for that are now completely on your side. I will say I have been moved and persuaded with that section alone.
Yeah, and I wonder how this will all play on a second viewing of the movie, because this did open up some things that, you know, you probably would get distracted by plotting and, again, hype and stuff like that. And this made me think back to what George Lucas apparently said when he was doing prequels, which was this idea that he wanted the different, you know, chapters of the story to have a sort of musical quality where they harmonize with each other. And I know a lot of people have been very down on J.J. Abrams for repeating things and for borrowing wholesale plot points. I think there are many ways you can still complain about that. However, I thought this video did a really nice job of highlighting those moments within this particular movie and across the whole series. Even things like Luke lifting the X-Wing in his, you know, Force Ghost form, you know, hearkening back to the original films and stuff like that, showing the world as being more lived in. And yeah, this did help me to appreciate, at least in context, at least in what the story was about, maybe more so than what actually happened on screen. But yeah, those ideas that Leia and Han are just trying to reach their son with that love. And yeah, it goes to that harmony point of then we see that scene again in the harmony and the more beautiful side of it, where Ben can just take his father in. And I also like the things that they pointed out about how, like, we see certain Force abilities demonstrated, so if we give the characters enough credit, they probably could figure those things out. Yeah, just the general attention to just, yeah, the human side of the characters is what I think this video did a really nice job at. And I like the idea, I don't think it's in the movie there at all, but that Finn, to an extent, like Leia and some of the other people, are trying to get it that they sense the Palpatine in Rey, and that's what that's what he's trying to tell her or whatever. Again, it just feels like love to me, but again, I like the perspectives that you brought to this video a lot more than just some of the stray nitpicks.
For me, especially, I mean, if you go back to the reviews, I clearly felt like there were things that they were obviously doing to just undo The Last Jedi. And that's why I'm saying, like, I want to rewatch the film again to see if I truly agree with you on certain things, because obviously hearing from this, like, essay perspective, it's easy to be persuaded. So I'd love to go and watch the movie again to be like, hey, you know what? Cinema Wins was right. Because there are things here that seem to actually flow and be in connectivity with The Last Jedi as opposed to undoing them. That scene with Luke Skywalker did get a lot of flack in Rise of Skywalker for being a whole thing that's kind of a big FU to the portrayal of Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. You're absolutely correct. He does arc in that movie. He does realize he was wrong. That's the whole point of Mark Hamill's arc in The Last Jedi, of a guy who's lost all his faith in everything, and then he finds his faith in again by the end of it. So him saying he's wrong is not necessarily undoing The Last Jedi. That is going off of what happened in The Last Jedi.
Just confirming the arc.
Yeah, and for him to come back as a Force ghost, it's nice to have him in that light. Because one thing that I thought you did really well throughout this whole video, knowing when the movie is tying it into previous philosophies that were established, especially with Yoda and Empire Strikes Back, talking about like the Force healing and whatnot, really paying attention to how this is linking through The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It seemed like you really were able to grasp onto what this trilogy was about and what this trilogy was aiming to thematically explore and expound upon, also tie into the original trilogy especially. I think my appreciation for this film is really enhanced. So I think to release this on May the 4th Be With You Day is perfect, because it's nice that for the last Skywalker film and dealing with reception and backlash and being exposed to it all, and oftentimes putting your own opinion out there that seems to, sometimes my opinions sound contradictory because there are things I really enjoyed about it and things I really didn't like, and it's fun to go, you know what, there definitely is a lot to appreciate about this, right down to like little things such as when they go and they see the whole parade of stuff happening. I watched the CinemaSins one on my own time, and he was pointing out how come they couldn't hear all that music and people dancing until they got over the hill. Like, couldn't they hear that from far away? And so my mind's like, gosh, yeah, freaking movie, what the hell? But then when I watch this, bringing up how it makes the galaxy feel lived in again, that it's not just desolate war zone territories and blah, blah, blah.
There's an actual culture that we get to see for a little bit.
It brings a layer of beauty and wonder back to it. Now, granted, I keep bringing this up. I don't know if I'll feel that again when I'm watching the actual movie, but at least in terms of looking at the context, I do appreciate that. And the other thing that I thought was really powerful that you brought up was the connection building between Kylo Ren and Rey, of how this trilogy has been setting up from the beginning. Them being like these opposing figures who have a connection, and that it's all leading up to them using their connection together to defeat the evil. Every trilogy is always about light versus dark, to have them come together, and then the lightsaber being a symbolism of sorts. But I also appreciate your humor too, of just knowing when you're like, screw it, this thing's funny, or screw it, this thing's badass, all right, just let it be. Because I think there's something to be said about that shipwreck fight scene, how like great and cool it is, but how the stakes can feel a little bit subdued because you're like, nah, you know this isn't going to be the final fight. You know this isn't going to lead to one of them truly dying. Seeing the symbolism and what that leads to made me love that fight even a whole lot more. There's plenty of things you can still criticize. There are things you definitely did not touch on. Leave that to CinemaSins and the other countless criticisms we've heard. This video is about appreciating what this movie did right and perhaps bringing a different perspective on certain elements, going against certain critiques. From this viewing experience, I think you've succeeded. I quite love this. It just feels good to feel good about Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. This brought me back to just the immediate experience of watching it, because in the theater, I had a really fun time. You know, the ensemble vibe is really fun and enjoyable, and there's some really dazzling action, some really dazzling visuals, and I think that once we get away from how important it is that all these movies are terrific, maybe we'll all be able to enjoy them with a little bit more relaxed, you know, inclusivity.
True. I mean, yeah, I could go on and on about a lot of things that you pointed out. A lot of them are really more little. Chewbacca, like the fake out, and a lot of people harped on that. I think we even did, of just how like there was no real breath there. But I don't know, it might have been one of those fake out. Yeah, I don't know if I can meet you there, actually.
I get your point. It's more for Rey's character than it is for us, but I would just argue that it should have worked both ways. You know, like, because if it's going to be a worthwhile emotional beat, we got to feel the emotion of the beat.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Cinema Wins. Fantastic job. I really am grateful for this video today. This moved me. So thank you for putting this together. Subscribe to Cinema Wins if you haven't done so already. It's good to have something positive in your life like this channel. You can subscribe to The Real Rejects, click our notification bell to get notified whenever we got a new YouTube video up. Check us out on Patreon, of course. Last but not least, we have to shout out the person on our Patreon page who undoubtedly is the biggest Star Wars fan over at our Patreon. That's TJ Trakas. Now, TJ, we've given a lot of goofy shout outs and everything. I just wanted to say to you today that I'm very grateful to have you at our page. Very grateful to have you in our lives. And I hope you and your family are able to be safe during this time, that the Force is strong within your family today. Crystal, your wife, seems like a really strong warrior, and you seem like a nice, tender, sensitive father.
But you're junk traders. You're nobodies.
Undercut my sincerity with a joke.
I didn't mean to be funny.
Yeah, you didn't succeed either.
No, that's the biggest twist.
And to Skylar, your daughter, I'll just say, when you're 18, come find me. When you're 18, come find me.
I hope you still got your rebel goatee there, TJ.
I don't know, your daughter, she talk?
Yeah, match.
I don't know what to say about her. I hope she's a good baby.
Heaven.